Hi, everybody. Good morning. It's 10:34 a.m. Mountain Time right now. The price of Bitcoin is $20,163. The price of Ethereum is $1,136. These are up a little bit today. Everything's up about 3%, give or take. Even my favorite little microcap coin Giddy is up 4.34%, which is good for my portfolio. I do hold some Giddy. Full disclosure, the vast majority of my portfolio is in Bitcoin, and most of it is in cold storage now. If that wasn't already obvious and clear from everything that I've talked about virtually every day since I started doing these live streams. Speaking of these live streams, let's talk about high level. What are we doing here? What's this all about? Did you ever read Watchmen? And I mean read it. The comic, the graphic novel, independent from the film that came out in 2009, I believe, and the short-lived HBO series that came out sometime after that. No, I mean, did you read the graphic novel? If you didn't, I recommend it. It's very good. Ahead of its time, brilliant. There's a character in there named Adrian Veidt. Veidt is the sort of superhero slash anti-hero slash supervillain who gets his abilities from his brilliance. So, Iron Man, what's his ability? Well, he's rich and he's brilliant. That's it. He doesn't have physical powers, he has cognitive powers. Same with Batman, right? He's rich and he's brilliant. Cognitive powers, not physical powers. Adrian Veidt is a similar sort of character in that universe of the Watchmen. And one thing that Veidt does that I think is really interesting is there's a scene of him sitting in front of many different TVs playing all at once, and he's trying to take in the information of what's going on there. On a surface level, this seems silly, right? You can't watch a whole bunch of TV shows at once. Though I will note that there is one really good example of somebody doing this and actually getting rich off of it. Total tangent. I'll make it quick. There was a guy in the 80s who did exactly this. He watched a whole bunch of TVs at the same time looking for something, some kind of opportunity, and he found one in the form of a game show where it looked like the game mechanics, if you were going to land on a certain spot in the game, it was going to be random. He realized it was not random. He then went on that show and won more money than anybody had ever won on a game show ever to that point in history. He almost put CBS out of business because they had to pay him so much money. True story. That actually happened. Back to Adrian Veidt, a not true story from the Watchmen comic series. He was watching these TVs all playing all at once in an effort to understand what was going on in society. It was his method for gathering information, gauging the temperature, seeing which way the winds were blowing, to mix metaphors. And I think this is an interesting visual, because this is basically what I do on Twitter, right? I'm watching what people are talking about, how they're talking about it, which way the opinions are moving, how the Overton window is shifting. If you're not familiar with the Overton window, this is the frame of public opinion that is acceptable to discuss openly. In 1900 in the Deep South, it was perfectly acceptable to be extremely racist. That was well within the Overton window. That is not inside the Overton window anymore. The Overton window has moved. It's not to say that people don't hold those opinions. It's just no longer publicly acceptable to discuss them. So, I'm watching the Overton window via my tabs on Twitter. I'm trying to understand what is going on at a 30,000-foot level, looking down on the country and the world. And it's interesting the things that you can pick up. It's not all just, confirmation bias. It's important to pay attention to people that you disagree with, especially intelligent people with whom you do agree on other topics. That's where you're going to get some real interesting information. It's fine to disagree with them. It's not fine to ignore them. I'm going to come back to all this in just a few minutes. I would like to see the comments, if there are any comments. Hold one moment, and I will pull up the comments. Okay. Moving on, next tab. Twitter. Like I said, this is all the TVs are in front of me. It's a lot more coherent on Twitter, even though Twitter is, relatively speaking, pretty chaotic. Just in, Bitcoin withdrawals from exchanges in June is the largest ever. People are pulling off of withdrawals. People are accumulating in self-custody, which is good and totally makes sense given the recent chaos in third-party custody, specifically lender institutions. So people are fleeing exchanges. Good. This is from Dennis Porter, is an article on bitcoinist.com. Quote, Biden executive order suggestions will undoubtedly exert pressure on investors to avoid involvement in or connection with Bitcoin mining. Porter is saying that they're coming for the miners, and he's not wrong. This article from bitcoinist.com, Eyes on Proof of Work, Biden administration to release Bitcoin mining report in a few weeks. The White House is getting ready to publish a report on blockchain mining, according to Costa Samaras, the Office of Science and Technology Policy's Principal Assistant Director for Energy. Samaras noted, quote, it's important if this is going to be part of our financial system in any meaningful way that it's developed responsibly and minimizes total emissions. When we think about digital assets, it has to be a climate and energy conversation. So this is a discussion about ESG, environmental and social governance. I think Porter is right. They're going to come for the miners. They're going to come for proof of work. This is a narrative that resonates in society right now for better or worse, and I am going to adamantly say for worse. I think proof of work is very poorly understood. The narrative around proof of work is all wrong. The very few people who understand it are deep, deep down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. They're the ones that actually understand the mechanics of how this benefits the energy grid, how it can be a boon to stability for energy, how it can harvest energy that's otherwise wasted or unharvested. The narrative that exists right now is that Bitcoin is boiling the ocean, and that's an easy narrative to push. It's not consistent. It doesn't hold up against any kind of real scrutiny. If you look at actual energy usage, Bitcoin uses far less energy than gaming. And in fact, the vast majority of the energy that Bitcoin is using is renewable. Gaming is not. Gaming doesn't come under any kind of scrutiny. Gaming is totally acceptable. Millions of jobs in the gaming industry. This totally fails to acknowledge the need for real, independent, apolitical money with private ownership, because those things fly in the face of centralized powers, centralized governance. So don't expect centralized planners to be pro-Bitcoin. They're going to look for any kind of narrative to attack it, to go after it. And proof of work is kind of foundational to all of that. They're not going to like proof of work. They haven't liked proof of work. As a Bitcoin community, I think we need to get very, very, very good at understanding and explaining and educating on the benefits of proof of work, and then actually building out that vision that we have enumerated. If we say that Bitcoin is actually good for stability, that it's actually good for the environment, that it's actually good for renewable energy, then we need to build in that direction to create a reality around that, rather than just spinning a narrative. Spinning a narrative is what politicians do, unhinged from reality. What Bitcoiners need to be doing is building the better reality. Says me, a non-engineer. Maybe I need to dive into founding some kind of company that does these things. From Bitcoin Archive, just in, Celsius paid another $40 million of its Bitcoin loan. New liquidation price is $2,722. I don't know where Celsius is getting this money, Alex Mashinsky, but he is shuffling money around in a fashion that preserves Celsius Network. There was the news going around a little while ago that FTX looked at acquiring Celsius Network and then passed. And the headline was that there was a $2 billion hole in their financials. That FTX was like, nah, never mind, we don't want it. Maybe that's true, maybe not. But Mashinsky, I gotta say, guys, I'm rooting for him. I hope he can pull this out. It would do my heart good to see a founder pull through, survive, and to make his depositors whole in the end. That would be a very good thing to happen, regardless of how you feel about centralized third-party lenders or borrowers. It's fine. You don't have to like Celsius. But I think Mashinsky is probably behind the scenes doing everything he can to save this business, where a lot of others are just going belly up. Three Arrows Capital. And my next tab, Voyager. Voyager has just filed for bankruptcy. Ages ago, not just months, but years ago, when I started depositing funds into these third-party lending protocols, they're not protocols, that's the wrong term, companies. They're centralized corporations. When I started depositing money onto these services run by normal corporations, my thinking was, well, I want the highest return possible, and I would like to borrow some money too, so I'm going to look for the best terms for those two different activities. But by spreading my money out, you see, then it's safe because not all of them could go down. They're not all going to collapse, even if one of them got hacked, and that was my real concern, is that one of them would get hacked. I didn't think that they would go belly up bankrupt, and I sure didn't think that they were all going to go belly up bankrupt. But that is more or less what we're looking at. Voyager has officially filed for bankruptcy not long after closing the doors on all withdrawals. I do still have about $4.50 on Voyager. I tried to withdraw everything. I think they have a minimum, and then there was kind of a rounding error somewhere in there. I just clicked on max withdrawal and tried to take out everything, but somehow at the end of it, I still had about $5 left on there. So farewell, $5 of Bitcoin. I will never see you again. I am sure that my account will not be made whole. I won't be able to withdraw that. Cheers. Whenever there's something like that, if I lose Bitcoin or I have it stolen, that has happened before. I have been scammed and hacked. If that ever happens, my strategy is to just buy more. Buy and hold seems to be a pretty foolproof strategy if you know how to do it, and it's not terribly complicated. It's simple. Maybe it's difficult if you feel like you don't have a lot of liquid funds, but nobody really feels like they have plenty of money. I've got so much money, I don't know what to do with it. Saving is the smart thing to do, and Bitcoin is savings. Think of it as your long-term savings account. From @MarketMeditations, in case you missed it, Brazil's largest bank will allow 54 million clients to buy Bitcoin. Again, institutional adoption continues because consumer demand is there. And this is interesting to me because it's kind of a dual-edged sword. We want people to adopt, and people have bank accounts. And if there are 54 million clients who want their Bitcoin and can buy it through their bank, well, that's good, right? That's a lot more people, a lot more demand, a lot more dispersal of Bitcoin. Adoption, that's what we want. But if they're buying it through their bank, and these are first-time buyers, where do you think they're going to hold that Bitcoin? Do you think they're going to withdraw it to individual personal custody? Can they even withdraw it to individual personal custody? When PayPal rolled out Bitcoin purchases, you couldn't transfer it to personal custody. When Robinhood deployed crypto and Bitcoin purchases, you couldn't take it out into personal custody. The whole idea, the crux, the core, the nut, the heart of all of this, the entire category of cryptocurrency, the idea at the center of it all is personal property that you can hold that nobody can confiscate. That is at the center of everything. And if people aren't doing that, which I have absolutely been guilty of, I have not been holding it into personal custody until fairly recently. Most of my funds, not all, but most, were deployed into different places. And somehow in the midst of all of this cascading domino collapse of lending institutions, I've managed to get virtually all of my funds out. I still have a little bit of money in Celsius Network, like $2,500 that I literally just forgot was there, and $5 on Voyager. But besides those marginal losses, I've managed to get the vast majority of my portfolio back into personal custody where I will hold it, I will be much, much, much more hesitant to ever deploy that into third-party custody ever again. And I am making a distinction here between centralized custody, as in the case of Voyager, or a smart contract. That is not exactly the same thing. You could make a comparison, but there are some categorical differences. Worth discussion for another day. Here's the two-edged sword. Brazil's largest bank will allow 54 million clients to buy Bitcoin. Great. Demand will go up, but the vast majority of those clients, I presume, will hold their Bitcoin with the bank, meaning the bank really has custody. And the heart, the core idea of Bitcoin is not really strengthened or leaned upon. If we want this experiment in cryptocurrency to succeed, then we need to do the thing that it was built to do, which is to hold coins in personal custody. Somebody in one of my previous videos asked me when I'm going to do a scripted video, because I always do these live videos and then I say, we should discuss this more thoroughly in a scripted video. Man, oh man. Part of the reason that I haven't been doing those lately is because they take so much time to research, write, shoot, and then edit together. If I'm doing those things, that's like a week of work. Yikes. These can happen a lot faster. I need to balance the two because they're absolutely topics that are evergreen and require thorough explanation rather than my meandering thoughts on the headlines of the day. Those are two different things, categorically different. We should probably balance them. So scripted videos soon. I hesitate to give you a timeline because I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. My apologies. Moving on to the next tab. This is from Nick Bhatia, who Time of Value BTC. He's at Time Value of BTC on Twitter. He's the author of Layered Money. So this guy appears to be a Bitcoin maximalist. Human history is fraught with human error. Bitcoin's supply algorithm and difficulty adjustment have no error in them. They are precise and set in stone. This is where the value comes from. This is my conflicted relationship with Bitcoin maximalism coming out again. This is somebody who is speaking with religious fervor. Bitcoin supply algorithm and difficulty adjustment have no error in them. Tell me if this sounds to you like an evangelical talking about the Bible being the Word of God and there is no flaw or error in it. Never mind that the Bible was written by the hand of people. You can say they were inspired by God, but go ahead and look at the actual history. It's passed through many hands and many translations. There have absolutely been parts that have been changed or omitted. And the collection that we call the Bible came together through a political committee, basically. So go ahead and ignore all that and tell yourself that it's the unvarnished Word of God. I see people doing the same thing with Bitcoin. It has no error in it. Guys, this is an invention. In fact, it's an invention that's ongoing. The code base continues to evolve and change. The people with their hands on it, building it, constructing it, continue to change. It's interesting to me. It's very interesting how religious the Bitcoin maximalists have become. This is, in all but name, a religion and a church. There are heretics, there are dogmas and doctrines, there's an immaculate conception and a founder who ascended to heaven. Guys, the overlap of Orthodox Christianity and Orthodox Bitcoinery, it's pretty heavy. This from Bitcoin is Savings, another Bitcoin maximalist. And again, let me make it clear, I mostly agree with these people. The problem is if you don't 100% agree, then you're a heretic. I'm not allowed to 90% agree or 95% agree because then I'm a heretic. I'm not allowed into the cult. There you go. I find this deeply problematic. Bitcoin is Savings. He is retweeting Michael Saylor saying, if you start with rural land and make it more scarce, more fungible, more portable, easier to sell, easier to borrow against, easier to farm, easier to develop, harder to tax, harder to seize, harder to impair, and more desirable to everyone on earth, you end up with Bitcoin. Saylor is quite a wordsmith and clearly very devoted to Bitcoin. And I understand what he's saying here. He's talking about land as an investment. But Bitcoin as savings is just paraphrasing that, saying land is a shitcoin. Should I use that phrase? I find it kind of crass. Should I just say altcoin? I think I'll say altcoin from now on. Land is an altcoin. This is the kind of maximalist zealotry that I can't get on board for. Because guess what? Land is not just an investment, it's also what you literally live on. You can't build a house on top of Bitcoin. This is the same kind of flawed logic as people saying never sell your Bitcoin, which Saylor absolutely says. He says mortgage your house and buy Bitcoin. My guy, I have to live somewhere, and I'd rather own it. I can't build a house on top of Bitcoin. I can't eat my Bitcoins. I would like to have those things, especially if society gets as unstable as I think it may become in the not distant future. And this is, some Twitter anon responding to that, saying basically, as someone who used to own 56 apartments, I can confirm real estate is an altcoin. There is no greater piece of property than Bitcoin. Okay, you owned 56 apartments. Did you have revenue from those? Did you have renters paying you rent? Cash flow is not the same thing as owning Bitcoin. Cash flow is what people were trying to get by lending out their Bitcoin, and look how that ended for the vast majority of them who didn't withdraw from third-party lenders. Maximalism is simplifying things so much that it's essentially false in many instances. I agree with the maximalist stance that Bitcoin is probably the greatest asset you can own. You should probably own other things, food, shelter. Those would be nice. You can't shelter yourself with Bitcoin. You can't eat Bitcoin. You're also supposed to never sell your Bitcoin, so how are you supposed to get those things? Well, lend them out. Well, people did lend them out, and look what happened. There's all these maxims that don't actually seem compatible. They're just religiously recited and repeated over and over, and you're supposed to believe it wholesale, 100%. And if you don't believe it 100%, then you're a heretic. Robert Breedlove, also a Bitcoin maximalist. Again, I agree with these people most of the time, the vast majority of the time. To the extent that it separates people from Bitcoin, crypto inflicts a, quote, tax on the continued success of Bitcoin and thus delays the bright orange future. Musings from my conversation with Cory Klippsten today, to be released soon. This is an interview that Breedlove did with Cory on his podcast, What is Money? Cory is the founder of Swan Bitcoin. Breedlove is the founder of the What is Money podcast. Cory is like the quintessential maximalist. He criticizes a lot of people who aren't 100% on board for the religion of Bitcoin, and is very critical of Alex Mashinsky. This is what people call toxic maximalism. And the maximalists will shrug this off and be like, oh, I'm so sorry that I was right. And it's like, the problem is not that you're right. It's that you don't actually care if anybody believes you. You're not trying to deliver this message in a way where it will be received. You're not interested in communicating. You're interested in being right. You're not interested in persuading other people to your persuasion, to your views. You're not interested in educating. You're interested in dominating. That's what the tone suggests. It's not good, guys. It's not good. What's the opposite of toxic? Nurturing? Can I be a nurturing maximalist? I would get on board for that. An inviting maximalist, a warm, open maximalist. I want a big umbrella. I want a lot of people on board for this. If Bitcoin is the monetary lifeboat for failing monetary systems the world over, I want as many people to get out as possible. I don't want to be one of the few who got off the sinking ship and then points and laughs back at the idiots. Have fun staying poor. Yikes. Yikes. Not a good look. I agree that we need the life raft. I want the life raft to be bigger and to have as many people on it as possible. Heidi, blockchain chick, she is not a maximalist. She is absolutely a crypto pluralist. She has her own YouTube channel, and she's a good one to hear out. I just watched Jim Cramer, on CNBC talk about how he has given up on Bitcoin. You have no idea how bullish this is. What you also don't know is how much of a beta this guy is. He couldn't take the heat when I asked him about his Lehman Brothers call, so he blocked me. What a baby. Jim Cramer blocked Blockchain Chick. You're blocked. She is not wrong that this is bullish, actually. Jim Cramer is fantastically bad at timing. He's so bad. He tells everybody to get in when we're at the top. He tells people that everything is lost when we're at the bottom. And it is reliable. It is a consistent counter indicator. Somebody should make an index fund that are based on the counter indicators that Jim Cramer gives and Scott Galloway. That's another one that is hilariously wrong and bad at timing. When Scott Galloway tells you to buy, you know it's time to sell. When he tells you to sell, you know we're at the bottom and it's a good time to buy. Happens a lot. We need a counter Galloway and a counter Cramer index. Maybe we could blend the two. Maybe we could just have a counter index of people who are consistently wrong. That'd be fun. That's a meme coin. Who wants to make this? I'll throw some money at that. That's worth the joke. That's worth the laugh and probably would be profitable. I've been talking a lot about maximalism, toxic maximalism, and how you need to be a Puritan or you are chased out, you're a heretic. Well, this happened recently. Nick Carter, who many people have looked up to for certainly education on the topics of Bitcoin's energy usage. Like I said, I think this is a critical topic that we need to understand, and Nick Carter has done the real work to understand this far and away more than almost anybody else. However, Bitcoin maximalism has basically chased him out of the fold. Now, Carter is a VC. He's a venture capitalist who's invested in many projects. Many of those projects are other chains. They're not Bitcoin. They're not built on Bitcoin. They were never meant to be built on Bitcoin. And somehow or other, that came up recently on Twitter, and all of the laser eyes maximalists jumped on him and called him a shill, whatever negative epithet you can throw at somebody who's not a part of your religious faith. This is bad. This is bad news. Nick Carter is somebody you want on your team. He's a very smart dude. He's very capable. He has, to this point, been very influential. And he's rational and he's level-headed. He's not somebody that just buys into dogmas for dogma's sake. He thinks for himself. You want independent thinkers in your fold. Carter just did this interview with the Bankless podcast, and it was interesting watching this. The Bankless guys, Ryan Sean Adams, he brings up the fact that if a Bitcoiner is just somebody who is bullish on Bitcoin and believes in Bitcoin and owns Bitcoin and thinks that it's going to be a huge part of the future of money, then Ryan Sean Adams, I can say a name, Ryan Sean Adams is a Bitcoiner. But most people within the broad cryptocurrency space would say he's an altcoiner, he's a shill, he's dead wrong, even though he agrees with you that Bitcoin is a vastly, incredibly important part of the future of money. We're talking about shades of gray. He agrees 90%, and a lot of the maximalists are saying you're not allowed to agree 90%, you have to agree 100%. Yikes. So they do this interview and they're driving away the moderates, even the most brilliant moderates, even moderates who have been thought leaders, who have been brilliant communicators to spread the word, to defend Bitcoin and proof of work against would-be regulators, ESG, environmental social governance, central planners who want to crush this. Guys, my maximalist friends, you do not want to chase these people out with your purity tests. It's real. This is bad. This is bad. You will lose if this is how it works, if this is how the community works. In this interview, Nick Carter calls maximalism a disease, it's a cancer, and he speaks about it in a way where it is dying. This is killing Bitcoin. that it's descending into madness and dogma, and they're chasing all the smart people out. I agree with him that this is a bad trend. I don't agree with him that this is killing Bitcoin, that it's on the decline. I don't think maximalism is on a downward trend. I think we're early on in maximalism. We're going to see much wider adoption and talk about it. This is something that, if you've been watching my channel, you'll know I have been thinking about Bitcoin maximalism and the culture and the behavior of this community for a while. And I felt like there's been a problem here for a while. And I see that behavior ramping up, not going away. This is going to have consequences. It's going to have consequences in adoption, in legislation. This is going to shape the public narrative. Nick Carter sees that, but he thinks that maximalism is in decline. There's another brilliant mind who disagrees. Balaji Srinivasan, whom I've talked about again many times before on this channel, just released his book, The Network State. It came out on the 4th of July. In this book, Srinivasan talks about how to build a new nation. How would you do that in the year 2022 or beyond? It's not obvious. What are you going to do? You're going to get an outpost in the middle of the ocean and put a flag in it? You're going to wage a war? He puts forward this interesting idea about establishing a new country, a new jurisdiction, and starting on the web. There's a lot more to it than that. But he recently did an interview with Tim Ferriss. The Tim Ferriss podcast is one of the most popular podcasts anywhere. And Balaji has done 2 previous interviews with Tim, both of which I highly recommend. They're dense with insight. They're fascinating. They're very long. And those 2 interviews that he's done previously with Tim Ferriss hold records as the #1 and the #2 most listened to Tim Ferriss podcast. They also hold records as some of the longest episodes that Tim has ever released. They're like 4 hours each. So people were willing to sit down to a 4-hour block twice to listen to Balaji Srinivasan because he had such insight. Rich knowledge, rich insight. The guy looks at all the different pieces going on, the trends, sees where they're going to converge, and extrapolates the future from there. Going back to where we started, this sounds a lot like Adrian Veidt. Now, I'm going to spoil Watchmen for those of you that haven't read it or watched it. Adrian Veidt ends up being the villain. I don't think Balaji Srinivasan is the villain. I think he's more, to cite another piece of fiction, the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov. This is Harry Seldon. Harry Seldon saw the collapse of the empire before it happened in the Foundation series. In this interview with Tim Ferriss, Balaji Srinivasan was asked by Tim, what does the United States look like in 5 years? To which Balaji, I'm paraphrasing, said basically, I don't know if it's 5 years, I don't know if it's 10, timing is pretty difficult, but the future looks in the United States something like BLM riots and January 6th Capitol every day. That's terrifying. That's a terrifying future to describe. But where is the lie? Is he wrong? I don't think he is. Me and Balaji Srinivasan and Adrian Veidt are looking at all of the different dialogues going on and trying to find the trend lines and trying to extrapolate where they converge. And then from that convergence, drawing out what a future might look like. And Balaji is saying it's going to be chaos, American anarchy. I think he's right. I'm seeing the same thing, and it worries me. Somebody earlier today, I was on Twitter and said something about if the dollar goes into hyperinflation and collapses. And somebody responded, I don't know the person, they said like, yes, dollar hyperinflation, the Bitcoin maximalist dream. I was like, first of all, I don't really consider myself a maximalist. Second of all, that is not my dream. A dollar hyperinflation is a catastrophe for everyone, regardless of whether you hold Bitcoin. Bitcoin is your backup plan. It's your escape vehicle. But you're not really going to get away from the chaos. And besides, chaos itself is not a great thing. Collapse is not a great thing, even if you manage to survive. I'm eager to read Balaji's book. I will be reading it and will be offering a review very soon. The Network State Balaji. This is the book. I highly recommend it. I literally haven't started it yet, but I don't have to. I recommend you go read this because of all of his prior writings and how brilliant they are and were. There's also many interviews with this man if you want to get a taste of what he talks about. Good grief, I just want to see the cover. Whatever. There it is, The Network State. Available now. Came out July 4th. #1 best-selling because so many people pre-ordered it. Notably, I remembered that this book had come out because I saw the interview with Balaji on the Tim Ferriss podcast via his his YouTube channel. It looks like it's not here anymore. Looks like he took it down, which I don't know why he would have. It just went up like yesterday, but I don't see it here. Moving on. How about some memes? Anna Marie Francisco, wasting no time with the next gen of Bitcoin, teaching her little baby from a book called Good Night Bitcoin. I actually have this book. I got it at the Bitcoin conference in Miami at the beginning of April. I've read it with my kids. It talks about the founding of Bitcoin in a metaphorical sense, where there are little monsters who think there needs to be better money, so Satoshi and Hal and others make money, but then Satoshi disappears, but it's okay because Hal and his friends finish making the better money. So far as children's literature goes, it's not great. I did think it was kind of funny, and I'm happy that I have it. And also, the proceeds were going to a charitable cause. Beeple, famed artist who sold his Everydays collection, spanning about 5,000 days, for $69 million at a Sotheby's auction. Bitcoin is certainly into cryptocurrency and into Bitcoin. His everyday for yesterday, July 5th, was this Bitcoin creation, The Last Bitcoin. I'm a longtime fan of Beeple, even though oftentimes I find his work to be grotesque and I barely want to look at it. I like his vibe. I like his vibe and his commentary and his current, his topic choices. And he's certainly somebody who is looking at and interested in Bitcoin. If you're not following Bitcoin Scoresby, this is just a fun account. These last tabs I have are just memes, really. You see, in this world, there are two kinds of people, my friend, those with Bitcoin and those who dig. At Bitcoin Scoresby, he's got all kinds of fun memes. He must be making them himself. There are lots of really fun ones in here. I want to get an electronic frame and just have it cycle through all of his Bitcoin memes. They're great. This, if you can't tell, is pulling from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, a Clint Eastwood spaghetti western, a classic. If you haven't seen the movie, it's a good one. Are you familiar with Ben Garrison? Ben Garrison is a deeply, radically Republican cartoonist. And this person is pointing out at Bilbo's Footcomb. Heck of a handle you got there, guy. This person on Twitter is pointing out the most recent Ben Garrison cartoon, saying, I think old Ben is finally losing it completely. Gun to my head, I could not tell you what this is trying to say. I thought this was so funny because he's absolutely right. What on earth is that image? What is the commentary here? It's a political cartoon, obviously. Tons of political iconography here. No idea what the coherent statement is supposed to be. Old Ben has maybe finally completely lost it. I just think this is hilarious. Totally incoherent political messaging. Couldn't even tell you what he's trying to say. Go ahead and check that out. Like, what is the chef's hat doing down here? There's a chef's hat? There's headphones? What is that? Who's this religious guy over here? And a cross. Why is this tinfoil hat person over here and this colander hat person is over here? What is going on? This piece, Garrison calls it the elephant in the room. And indeed, there is an elephant in the middle of this supposed room. But I don't know what the elephant is. What does it symbolize? Who knows? If anyone has a theory, please let me know down in the comments. I would be more than happy to entertain those theories. Poor Ben Garrison. This is from Carl B. Menger on Twitter. Focus on the real signal and cut out the noise. Ask yourself honestly why we need a decentralized monetary network. Bitcoin is so much more than fiat price. He's right. This is a very simplistic cartoon. You've got the vast majority of people looking at the price and interested in the price, and that's all they're interested in. And indeed, the price is important in the sense that it signals to people that this is important, right? It's a very metered, measured, numeric way of demonstrating that this matters. If Bitcoin was still fractions of a penny, people probably wouldn't be paying any attention to it. But because it's gone up in price, people are paying attention to it. But the attention, the price, is not really what matters here. What matters is that it is unconfiscatable money, that it is disintermediated money transfer, that you can transfer any amount of money to anyone, anywhere in the world, for fractions of a penny, any time of day or night, with no third-party approval or involvement, that it is irrevocable once done. This is private property in its purest form, as Michael Saylor would put it. That's the why. That's why this matters. Yes, the price is interesting. Yes, we should pay attention to the price. Yes, the price does matter, but it only matters in as much as it brings people to the why. The why is what Bitcoin does. Why is it different? An independent monetary store of value and transfer system. Bitcoin meme of the day from Swan Bitcoin. This is Swan Bitcoin, of course, founded by Corey Clipston, who we discussed a little bit earlier. I only saw this meme recently, and I quite liked it. Bitcoin meme of the day. Bear markets create Bitcoiners. Bitcoiners create bull markets. Bull markets create altcoiners. Altcoiners create bear markets. You've probably seen this before. Good times create, good men create good times. Good times create bad men. Bad men create bad times. Something like that. And in fact, in the recent interview that Balaji Srinivasan did with Tim Ferriss, he talks about this meme exactly and how variations of this meme will pop up in different cultural tribes. It's because the concept is fairly universal. History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. As Mark Twain would say, the way Balaji says it is that history is helical, right? History moves forward, but in a circle. It's a helix. This is a metaphor that's extremely useful for understanding history and why we seem to swing back toward things as they once were, and then we got away from them. Why do we come back? We used to think that people in the mid-20th century who leaned toward fascism must be crazy. It doesn't seem so crazy after the last 10 years. We see a lot of fascists or fascist sympathists. Fascism sympathy. Same with communism, right? Communism was the great evil, anathema, the opposite of the American way. We fought wars over this. A lot of communists and communist sympathizers in the United States now. History is helical. We end up coming back to where we started, though time continues to move forward. Well, team, that's what I got today. My meandering, musing thoughts. Let me know what topics you would like to talk about in the future. I do want to do more scripted videos on evergreen topics, important issues that deserve to be thoroughly explored, not just discussed conversationally. I'm going to work on that. Going to get those out soon. We will talk again in the future. Thanks. Let me know what you think down in the comments. We'll address it in a future video.